What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Braun Bafflestone, and today we are having another episode of my Deep Dive series, this time into one of the most versatile spells in the game, Major Image. But before we do, I actually have a sponsor today. Very exciting for a new channel to have its first sponsor, so many thanks and huge shout out to Everett. And remember, when you absolutely, positively have to restrain someone overnight, Everett's Black Tentacles. So, Major Image. This is a third level illusion spell available to bards, warlocks, sorcerers, and wizards. And before I talk about the spell itself, I have to address the fact that illusions are judged wildly differently from table to table. Some DMs are pretty friendly towards illusions. Some DMs are not so friendly towards illusions. I personally am one of those DMs that has been accused of being not so friendly towards illusions. Personally, I think that sometimes the players get a little too creative and push the boundaries of the spell a little bit too far. But sometimes DMs love that sort of thing and can really let you, express that creativity. So your mileage may vary. If you have a DM that's very friendly towards illusions, then this spell is going to be even better. But for the purposes of this analysis, I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of someone who's not super friendly towards illusions, but I can read, and rules as written, Major Image is a really good spell. I'm very impressed with it and give it very high marks. So what makes this spell so great? Let's take a look. I've put the description of the spell on the screen, and we can see that it allows the caster to create the image of a creature, an object, or a visible phenomenon, including atmospheric effects, no larger than a 20-foot cube. That's big enough for gargantuan creatures, so you can do dragons and such. And it is a perfect illusion with all of the sounds and smells and temperature necessary to sell it. All it is limited is the fact that it cannot create damage or lasting physical effects. And you can even move the illusion within the impressive 120-foot radius range and make it move naturally and even conduct conversations. So that's pretty cool. There are two end conditions attached to the spell. If you interact with it at all, it's revealed as an illusion. And if you suspect that it's an illusion, you can take an action to make an investigation check. And if you beat the spell save DC, then it is also revealed as an illusion. So just rules as written, that's pretty cool. There are three aspects to Dungeons & Dragons: exploration, interaction, and combat. And we can see that this spell has some pretty strong applications for both interactions and combat. So if you're in an interaction, for example, that's going south and this person isn't playing ball with you, you could use the illusion to, for example, create the image of the queen who comes walking in, or the guild master, or the police, or whoever's going to have a positive relationship with this person, and they can just say, hey, why are you giving these guys a hard time? They're with me. Like, hook them up. Or you can use it to perhaps penetrate an enemy stronghold by creating the illusion of a guard or a lieutenant or some such, and just walk right in. If anyone raises an eyebrow, the illusion can just tell them that, hey, they're my guests, or hey, they're my prisoners, if you want to do that old trope. So clearly the spell has a lot of really great uses in that interaction side of the game, only limited by your imagination. And again, if you have a DM that's friendly towards illusions, you can do really amazing things with it. However, you can also use this spell in combat. Now, this is where I think that because most players are offensive-minded, that they really start trying to stretch the boundaries of this spell. But rules as written, there are indisputably two things that you can 100% do with this spell in combat that are pretty good. One, you can create the illusion of environmental hazards that no one is going to want to walk into voluntarily, and thereby control the battlefield conditions to a degree. So you can use it to create the image of an Everett's Black Tentacles or a prismatic sphere. Use your imagination. There's all sorts of things that you can make that people aren't going to want to step into, and thus risk interaction with the illusion and revealing it as an illusion. So you can use it in that fashion. But honestly, I think the best way to use this spell in combat is to create the illusion of perfect obscurement. by which I mean you can see and they can't. That means that you attack at advantage and can use sight spells, whereas they attack at disadvantage and cannot use sight spells. Plus, you can use the hide maneuver, and then they might not be able to attack you at all. So that's pretty fantastic. Now, the problem is that you reveal the illusion if they enter the area of effect, and if they suspect, they will make an investigation check. So to mitigate against that, what you can do is make the illusion of an atmospheric effect, like fog or smoke or darkness, which is not going to raise suspicion if a ranged attack passes through it. This is as per sage advice, which I have put on the screen, which verifies this interpretation. As long as they don't enter the area of effect, they're not going to suspect an illusion and they're not going to make an investigation check. So that's really awesome. And to mitigate the fact that they can enter the area of effect, you can place it in somewhere that a place that they can't access. So perhaps if you can fly, you place it way high up, or perhaps you place it behind cover or something that they can't easily access. And another way to mitigate it is by making a very small area of effect. It can make up to a 20-foot cube, but it doesn't have to be. So one thing that I often like to do is to make the effect only a 10-foot cube, which is big enough to cover my Phantom Steed, or a 5-foot cube if I'm not on my Phantom Steed. And that way they can't actually enter the space, and because their attacks, are expected to go through the, fog or whatever, it's not going to be revealed. So you have some versatility there. Sometimes you're going to want a bigger space, or a bigger effect because maybe your party members want to take advantage of it or something, or sometimes you're going to want to make the smaller one, but you do have the option for both, and that's pretty cool. So you do require an action to move the illusion. Remember, it is cast on a space and not on a creature or an object that might have independent movement, so you are going to have to use an action to move it around. So once you place it, you're probably not going to be moving too much in combat. However, you can outsource the spell to your familiar with a Ring of Spell Storing or a Spell Gem or Arcane Abeyance. And if you do that, then they can move the illusion with you as you move. Obviously, that's a bit more powerful and flexible, but if you don't have that ability, you can still place it in a good spot to lessen the chance that they're going to enter the area of effect. And as long as it's an atmospheric condition, they're not going to suspect that it's an illusion. So those uses alone make this spell extremely powerful in combat. Again, of course, if your DM is friendly, then you can do even more crazy stuff with it. But even if your DM doesn't want to play too much ball with you, rules as written, it can definitely do these things. And those are really powerful combat effects. The last thing that we need to mention is that you can make this spell permanent by casting it as a 6th level slot. So that's even better. No concentration necessary and lasts until dispelled. So it's a little bit more difficult to manage logistically, I think, than at first glance, because again, it has to be cast on a space. It doesn't have independent movement. You will have to use your action to move it around. But as long as you are in like an exploration scenario and not, say, like an overland travel scenario, that should be fine. It's got a really big 120-foot radius or 240-foot diameter range. So, if you're not moving too quickly, it's not too hard to devote an action every now and then to move the illusion with you. And it's really nice to have that sort of perfect obscurement available that you can bring into play with just an action and not have to use a slot. So that's it. That's why I think this spell is really fantastic. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. It would be great if people could list all of the amazing ways that they've used this spell in the past. I'm sure there's all sorts of creative ways that I can barely even imagine, so please share. And regardless, thanks so much for watching. This has been the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Braun Bafflestone. See you next time.